Okay, we're ready to roll into the compliance and permitting session. And representing that session is Jim Brannen with UP. Jim's going to talk to us about optimizing an inspection plan. If you don't know Jim, he's a senior environmental manager with Union Pacific. He's been with UP for 13 years and under a fuel and environmental management group for 8 of those years. He's got extensive experience in a lot of areas: sustainability, mobile air emissions, storage of regulated substances, community right to know. And in spite of being a graduate from both University of Nebraska's at Lincoln and Omaha, he's still a good guy, I guess. So with that, Jim, welcome, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Kevin. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, you're perfectly clear.
Great. I'm glad to be here, and thanks to Emma and Chris for hosting. This has been great so far. So before I jump into the presentation, so we're talking about optimizing an inspection plan. In this presentation, we're specifically going to be focusing on inspections for our SPCC and our SWPPP plans. But we tried to build this presentation to be applied across the board for whatever project you might be working on. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, on the agenda today. So we're going to do a quick overview of regulations, the SPCC and SWPPP. I don't think many of us will need that. I'll get into a little bit of the project scope. Then I'll review kind of a high-level timeline past to present. Then we'll look at a table looking at past state versus the current state of our inspection program. And then we'll actually get into the optimizing your inspection plan portion of the presentation, which will include your essential resources and data. How do you roll out and implement greater than 11,000 annual tasks? And then how do you measure success? And then we'll close with some challenges that we faced and what we're looking forward to implementing in the future. Okay, my slides are a little bit delayed here. Okay, so why do we conduct these inspections? So with spill prevention, control, and countermeasures, you have to have a permit at facilities that have a storage of greater than 1,320 gallons with, applied to containers that have 55 gallons or more. So all of those containers, and you can see a couple examples on the bottom, all of those containers, the convault on the left and then the next is a portable container, those require periodic inspections. So that's what we're talking about. Stormwater pollution prevention plans, this applies to where we conduct vehicle maintenance, pretty simple. And this program, this inspection program was rolled out by myself and then the program team leader for the stormwater pollution prevention plans is Jessica Johnson. So I would be ashamed if I didn't say thank you, Jessica. And I saw you asked Bob a question, so I know you're out there. But thank you very much. So as I had previously mentioned, the project scope includes 11,000 annual, required inspection and sampling events. And when we were putting this out to bid, the important thing that we needed to make sure we included was the synergies between the two. If you're going out to a yard to do an inspection on a tank, why wouldn't you also do your stormwater pollution prevention inspections? And so that's what we did. And just talking kind of big picture here for what we're talking about taking the inspections off of the field, those that work in the field for Union Pacific, what we know as activity owners, taking that from them and contracting it out. There we go. Okay, so timeline. On the left, you see in September 2018, UP adopted and began to roll out Precision Scheduled Railroading, or what we know as Unified Plan 2020. And this being able to allow the workforce to focus on moving cars instead of doing the inspections was one of the big drivers, along with compliance assurance. In July of 2019, we formed EMS programs, which they were all brand new positions, centralized in Omaha, Nebraska. And the whole purpose of this group was to identify gaps and then implement controls. And it's in line with ISO 14000. So that's what Jessica and I are both doing. In August 2019, we issued our request for proposal to get the inspections completed. So you can see that, we were given a month to put it together, not much time. We started the inspections first quarter 2020, and then COVID hit. And I think, Nancy Knowlton touched on this in her presentation, but one thing that I take away, and the reason I like this slide, is it really does show that rapid change is here, and it's here to stay. And I was thinking, if there was only one takeaway that you could have from this presentation, it's that in our industry today, we have to have a resilient workforce. And going back to the EMS program talk, that's really where we're getting our resiliency in the form of leader standard work in most cases. Okay, so past state versus current state. The roles. Past state activity owners, now we have contractors. Documentation, control, that was on the shared drive. Now we have an enterprise system. Monitoring and measurement, so compliance assurance. We had very limited compliance assurance with the past way we were doing things, and now it's near real time. Evaluation of compliance. In the past, it was very manual. It included lots of emails and lots of spreadsheets. And now we are able to do all of this in an enterprise system. Operating productivity. This one is a big win for the field folks at UP. Past state, with the activity owners, we had hundreds of point of contacts for these inspections. So if they had a question or needed to get something shored up, they were having to call multiple people. And now the way that we actually issued the RFP, we have one project manager per state. So all they got to do is call one person to figure that, to get the answer that they're looking for. And then closure of action items. This is important. Past state, activity owners, and it remains the activity owners today. Okay, so getting into optimizing your inspection plan. This is pretty simple, and I think that these are the three biggest things you could focus on and make sure that you do right if you're going to be working on a complex project such as this. The first is going back to that EMS. This is the framework. It's that plan, do, check, adjust model. Without this, when that change happens, when COVID comes, you have that standard work. You have that framework to go back to make those tweaks that you need. But it's also a really great tool for engaging. So building it together, building it with the team in the field, building it with those in Omaha, Nebraska, at our corporate headquarters. It was a really nice tool for us to use. Inventory, obviously, you need the data. And then lastly, collaborative team with focus on quality. And I'm not talking, so let me specifically say, when I say quality, I'm saying we're not cutting any corners. We're making sure that the inspection plan is sustainable for years to come. So how do you roll out and implement greater than 11,000 annual tasks? It starts with an effective bid process and the support of your supply department. UP has an unbelievable supply department that I'm proud to be a part of today. And that's where it started, and that's how we were able to be so effective right out of the gate. Communication of expectations, standard work, getting back to that, and what helps us be resilient today. Part of that standard work included a one-time site visit. So every single state, we operate in 23 states. Every single state, we required that the team, both the field, Omaha, and the contractors visit on site for 1 to 2 days and put faces to the names, build the relationship, but also show them things that are important to us, like our safety culture. Next on here is clear roles and responsibilities, making sure everybody knows what their role is and what they're responsible for. Work order system. This was huge for us and eventually really big for us when it comes to key performance indicators. But the work order system, it really speaks volumes to that real-time data. So after the inspections are completed, they'll go into our work order system and close the work orders that were generated for that particular month. Flexibility. So flexibility is, in my mind, just listening and acting on those efficiencies. So everything can get better. Nothing's perfect right out of the gate. So for an example, there was a few of our contractors that came back and said we could really make this more seamless and painless process if we use tablets and we go digital forms. And we said, okay, that's great. And we worked through it. And we said it's very important that they're the exact same forms that are on our plans and permits. And we got it done. And now it's increased the amount of time that it takes to do those, and ultimately allows them to do more value-added work down the road. And then lastly, funding. High-level management buy-in. This took a lot of time, but working it up through the chain is incredibly important to make sure that everybody realizes and understands why we're doing this and what the actual outcomes will be and what the value it is, what value it brings to the company. Okay, so how do you measure success? Most importantly, you get feedback from all team members, both contractor side and company side. And we do that multiple ways: phone calls, emails, surveys. This is really important from a sustainability perspective, just because what an inspection, or I guess how an inspection is being conducted in one state or one rail yard might be much more successful than another. So we're wanting to make sure that we're getting that feedback from across the board. Getting feedback to the contractors. In our standard work, we've built in quarterly feedback for all of our contractor firms. And then as part of this, making sure that you're doing and giving that and receiving that feedback with patience and grace, especially in today's time. And then lastly, key performance indicators. So making sure that you are including this data and working it up the chain in order to get the resources and support you need to make it a really successful program. So this includes how many inspections were missed and why, how many exceptions or action items have come from those exceptions, how many of those are open and why. Okay, so challenges and future. Starting on the left with challenges. Forecasting for change management. First is turnover and workload, and this was a really big challenge for us. We did have quite a bit of turnover with some of the contractors, and it's difficult to start at the beginning of that learning curve, right? But with that standard work, it's really, really easy to communicate that again and get everybody on the same page without having to reinvent something. Funding, again, lots of time and lots of conversations around funding and who's going to fix what and when. Unplanned events, we all know that that's an issue with FLIP, so making sure that the contractors are getting out to those rain events and getting the samples they need in time. And lastly, pandemic. Next bullet under challenges, So while we are doing over 11,000 inspections, I would say probably 99% of our SWIP and SPCC locations are part of this program. There are a select few, and those select few, for example, would be locations like not very easily accessible locations, maybe even like in our telecom departments. So some of these locations, in many instances, aren't even accessible by roads. It's only accessible by rail. So that was a big challenge for us. And then exceptions tracking. We had a little bit of a hiccup. We wanted to roll out an enterprise system for exceptions tracking, and we had a little bit of a hiccup there, and we are looking into the future to get that up and running. So right now we're actually using an interim solution with spreadsheets on a shared drive and making sure that we're working directly with those project managers in each state. So what does the future look like? January, we're going to be rolling out that exceptions tracking management system. Key performance indicators, I mentioned that's going up through the chain now, but it's going to be going to the top starting in January. We're going to be sending that out to our CEO, Lance Fritz. So we're really looking forward to that feedback, that support, and any additional resources we might need. So who manages new pieces? We still do have a few administrative pieces out there that we still have to figure out who's going to be managing those. Is it going to be the field? Is it going to be the programs? Is it going to be the activity owners? Data analytics. I'm really excited with regards to data analytics because there is so much data coming in. So what can we learn from the data that's coming in? What can we apply in a more strategic way? So if you see something that's coming through in the data that seems to be a bit more systemic, then that's where you can really make the greatest impacts. And then obviously never settling and always improving our performance and making it better year over year. So hopefully this was helpful for you to see or to hear what we saw as the important pieces of optimizing an inspection plan or any other complex project you might be tackling today. Thanks again to University of Illinois, and please feel free to reach out to me direct anytime with additional questions that you might have.
Jim, thanks so much. That was really interesting. Are you a one-man band with this program? I mean, obviously for 11,000 tasks, you must have a lot of help, not just on the consultant side, from on the internal side, right? What does that team look like on the UP side?
It's lots of help, and it's a big team. So we have, I mentioned Jessica Johnson, who is our program manager for stormwater. She handles that program, and so her and I are the ones kind of in behind the scenes writing the standards and working up the RFPs and looking at the data and reporting that data. But we have an entire team that's field focused. I want to say off the top of my head, 13 environmental professionals out in the field that are, they each have their assigned territory. So without them, this couldn't happen.
Just incredible. That's a huge undertaking. We do have a couple of questions, Jim. We have a couple of questions, and I think because we're at the time here, I think Emma, if you can forward those on to Jim, I think we can get those answered.
Perfect. I'll do that.
All right, Jim. Thanks again. Very good.
Kevin.